inside and I saw a frog leg. I don't know why I saw a frog leg, but that's what I said. That's the first part of the activity. Now, the opportunity is twofold in this game. The opportunity is for you, the gift receiver, to name a gift. That's kind of fun. That's an opportunity. It's not a threat. But the real opportunity is for the gift giver, because the gift giver then has to say, so you look and you say, thank you for giving me a frog's leg, and the person will look at you and say, I knew you wanted a frog's leg because. So whatever you find, the person who has received it is going to say, absolutely, I'm so glad you're happy. I got it for you because. So you have to respond to whatever they say, right? What a great opportunity. Now, some of you are sitting there going, oh, that's hard. I don't want to do it. I'm going to make a fool of myself. Others of you, are, if you're following this advice, are saying, what a great opportunity, right? So the game, again, is played like this. You and your partner will exchange, each will exchange a gift. One will start, then the other will follow. The first person will give a gift to the second person opens the box, however big the box is, and if the box is big and you find a penny in it, perfect, doesn't matter. If the box is heavy and you find a feather in it, fine, there's no way to get it wrong, okay? Whatever's in the box is in the box. You can return it and get what you wanted later, okay? The person, then, you will name it, you'll say, thank you for the, whatever you saw in the box. The person who gave it to you will say, I'm so glad you're excited, I got it for you because. And you will give a reason that you got them whatever they decided you gave them. Make sense? All right. So very quickly, just in 5 seconds, find a partner if you're willing to do this with a partner. Everybody have a partner? Okay. All right, in your partnerships, pick an A person and a B person. You may stand or sit, it's totally up to you. Pick an A and pick a B, okay? B goes first, ha ha ha. All right, B give A a gift. B give A a gift, A thank them, and then B will name and give the reason they gave it to him. Please, let's wrap it up. All right, if we can all have our seats. If we can all, and that's hard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, did you get what you wanted? Pretty neat, huh? You always get what you want. Now, for some of you, this was really hard because you were really taking the challenge and not seeing what was in the box until you looked in there, okay? Was anybody surprised by what you found in the box? What did you find, sir? What was in the box? What? Wow, nice, nice. If you've got a Ferrari, you need a transmission. I like it. Who else found something that was surprising? What did you find? A live unicorn. That's a great gift, right? How was it as the gift giver? Were you surprised at what your partner found in the box? Isn't it interesting that when we give an imaginary gift, knowing that the person's going to name it, we already have in mind what they're going to find? And when they say live unicorn, we go, well, that's interesting, right? So the point of this game is to, one, remind ourselves we have to get out of our own way, like we talked about before, but to see this as an opportunity and to have fun. I love watching people play this game. The number of smiles that I saw amongst you, and I have to admit, when I first started, some of you looked a little dour, a little doubting, okay? But in that last game, you were all smiling and looked like you were having fun. So when you reframe the spontaneous speaking opportunity as an opportunity, as something that you can co-create and share, all of a sudden, you are less nervous, less defensive, and you can accomplish something pretty darn good. In this case, a fun outcome. This reminds us of perhaps the most famous of all improvisation sayings, yes and. A lot of us live our communication lives saying no but. Yes and opens up a tremendous amount of opportunities. And this doesn't mean you have to say yes and to a question somebody asks. This just means the approach you take to the situation. So you're going to ask me questions. That's an opportunity. Yes, and I will follow through. Versus no and being defensive. So we've accomplished the first 2 steps of our process. First, we get out of our own way. And second, we reframe the situation as an opportunity. The next phase is also hard, but very rewarding. And that is to slow down and listen. You need to understand the demands of the requirement you find yourself in order to respond appropriately. But often, we jump ahead. We listen just enough to think we got it, and then we go ahead, starting to think about what we're going to respond, and then we respond. We really need to listen. Because fundamentally, as a communicator, your job is to be in service of your audience. And if you don't understand what your audience is asking or needs, you can't fulfill that obligation. So we need to slow down and listen. I have a fun game to play. In this game, you are going to SPLLEVERYTHINGYOUSAY. TOYOURPARTNER. I will translate. You're going to get with the same partner you just worked with, and you are going to have a very brief conversation about something fun that you plan to do today. I know this is the most fun you're going to have all day, but the next fun thing you're going to do today, you are going to tell your partner what you are going to do that will be fun today, but you are going to do so by spellingit. Okay? So you're going to spell it. It's okay if you are not a good speller. Okay? You'll see the benefit of doing this. So, with the partner you just worked with, person A is going to go first this time. You are simply going to tell your partner, actually you're going to spell to your partner, what it is of fun, something of fun, that you're going to do today. Okay? Do what you were really going to do for fun and not do things like FEEDTHECAT, right? Just because you don't want to spell, right? So you can use big words. All right, 30 seconds each. Spell to your partner something fun that you're going to do today. Would you like to play? Go ahead.
G-O-T-H-E-G-A-M-E.
Oh my goodness, say it again. Spell it again. Yep.
Yep. G-A-M-E.
EXCELLENT. IHOPETHAT THEYWIN.
E-X-L-C-E-L-L-E-N-T.
Thank you. That was very good. Thank you. Spelling. GREAT exclamation point. THANKYOU PLEASE TAKEYOURSEAT. So what did we learn? What did we learn? Besides that we're not so good at spelling. You have to pause between the words. How did this change your interaction with the person you were interacting with? What did you have to do? Focus and listen. And you can't be thinking ahead. You have to be in the moment. When you listen and truly understand what the person is trying to say, then you can respond in a better way, a more targeted response. We often don't listen. So we start by getting out of our own way. We then reframe the situation as an opportunity. Those are things we do inside our head. But in the moment of interacting, we have to listen first before we can respond to the spontaneous request. Perhaps my most favorite maxim comes from this activity. Don't just do something, stand there. Listen, and then respond. Now, how do we respond? That brings us to the fourth part of our process. And that is, we have to tell a story. We respond in a way that has a structure. All stories have structure. We have to respond in a structured way. The key to successful spontaneous speaking, and by the way, planned speaking, is having a structure. I would like to introduce you to two of the most prevalent and popular and useful structures you can use to communicate a message in a spontaneous situation. But before we get there, we have to talk about the value of structure. It increases what is called processing fluency, the effectiveness of which or through which we process information. We actually process structured information roughly 40% more effectively and efficiently than information that's not structured. I love looking out in this audience because you will remember, as I remember, phone numbers. When you had to remember them if you wanted to call somebody. Okay? Young folks today don't need to remember phone numbers. They just need to look at a picture, push a button, and then the voice starts talking on the other end. 10-digit phone numbers, it's actually hard to remember 10-digit phone numbers. How did you do it? You chunked it into a structure, 3, 3, and 4. Structure helps us remember. The same is true when speaking spontaneously or in a planned situation. So let me introduce you to two useful structures. The first useful structure you have probably heard or used in some incarnation. It is the problem, solution, benefit structure. You start by talking about what the issue is, the problem. You then talk about a way of solving it, and then you talk about the benefits of following through on it. Very persuasive, very effective. You start by talking about what the issue is, the problem. You then talk about a way of solving it, and then you talk about the benefits of following through on it. Very persuasive, very effective. Helps you as the speaker remember it, helps your audience know where you're going with it. When I was a tour guide on this campus many years ago, what do you think the single most important thing they drilled into our head? It took a full quarter, by the way, to train to be a tour guide here. They used to line us up at one end of the quad and have us walk backwards straight, and if you failed, you had to start over. To this day, I can walk backwards in a straight line because of that. As part of that training, what do you think the most important thing they taught us was? Never lose your tour group. I'm not joking. Never lose your tour group. The same is true as a presenter. Never lose your audience. The way you keep your audience on track is by providing structure. None of you would go on a tour with me if I said, "Hi, my name's Matt, let's go." You want to know where you're going, why you're going there, how long it's going to take. You need to set expectations, and structure does that. Problem, solution, benefit is a wonderful structure to have in your back pocket. It's something that you can use quickly when you're in the moment. It can be reframed so it's not always a problem you're talking about. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe there's a market opportunity you want to go out and capture. It's not a problem that we're not doing it, but maybe we'd be better off if we did. So it becomes opportunity, solution, which are the steps to achieve it, and then the benefit. Another structure, which works equally well, is the what, so what, now what structure. You start by talking about what it is. Then you talk about why it's important, and then what the next steps are. Is the what, so what, now what structure. You start by talking about what it is. Then you talk about why it's important, and then what the next steps are. This is a wonderful formula for answering questions, for introducing people. So if I'm in the moment somebody asks me to introduce somebody, I change the what to who. I say who they are, why they're important, and what we're going to do next. Maybe listen to them, maybe drink our wine, whatever, right? What, so what, now what. The reality is this: when you are in a spontaneous speaking situation, you have to do two things simultaneously. You have to figure out what to say and how to say it. These structures help you by telling you how to say it. If you can become comfortable with these structures, you can be in a situation where you can respond very ably to spontaneous speaking situations. We're going to practice, because that's what we do. Here's the situation. Is everybody familiar with this child's toy? It's a slinky. Okay? You are going to sell this slinky to your partner using either problem, solution, benefit, or opportunity, solution, benefit. What does the slinky provide you? Or you could use what, so what, now what. What is it? Why is it important? And the next steps might be to buy it. Okay? So by using that structure, see how already it helps you? It helps you focus. Get with your partner. And we're only going to have one partner sell to the other partner. Okay? So get with your partner. One of you will volunteer to sell to the other. Okay? Sell a slinky using problem, solution, benefit, or what, so what, now what. Please begin.
So we have the handouts, but I'm also going to be doing the
Microphone.
mic.
So when I debrief this, you can go ahead and pass them out.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
After Q&A?
No, after this activity.
Okay, and then after that we'll do Q&A.
Correct. Close the deal, seal the deal. Sure? Awesome. I'm recruiting you all for my next business as my salespeople. Please try to ignore this, but as we're speaking, the handout I told you about is coming around. On the back of that handout, you are going to see a list of structures, the two we talked about and several others, that can help you in spontaneous speaking situations. These structures help because they help you understand how you're going to say what you say. Structure sets you free, and I know that's kind of ironic, but it's true. If you have that structure, then you're free to think about what it is you're going to say. It reduces the cognitive load of figuring out what you're saying and how you're going to say it. All of this is on that handout. Okay? So what does this all mean? It means that we have within our ability the tools and the approaches to help us in spontaneous speaking situations. The very first thing we have to do is manage our anxiety, because you can't be an effective speaker if you don't have your anxiety under control. And we talked about how you can do that by greeting your anxiety, reframing as a conversation, and being in the present moment. Once you do that, you need to practice a series of 4 steps that will help you speak spontaneously. First, you get out of your own way. I would love it if all of you, on your way from here to the football game, point at things and call them the wrong name. Practice a series of 4 steps that will help you speak spontaneously. First, you get out of your own way. I would love it if all of you, on your way from here to the football game, the tools and the approaches to help us in spontaneous speaking situations. The very first thing we have to do is manage our anxiety, because you can't be an effective speaker if you don't have your anxiety under control. And we talked about how you can do that by greeting your anxiety, reframing as a conversation, and being in the present moment. Once you do that, you need to practice a series of 4 steps that will help you speak spontaneously. First, you get out of your own way. I would love it if all of you, on your way from here to the football game, point at things and call them the wrong name. It'll be fun. If most of us do it, then it won't be weird. If only 1 and 2 of us do it, it'll be weird. Right? Second, give gifts. By that I mean see your interactions as ones of opportunity, not challenges. Third, take the time to listen. Listen. And then finally, use structures. And you have to practice these structures. I practice these structures on my kids. I have 2 kids. When they ask me questions, I usually answer them in what, so what, now what. They don't know it. Friends ask their dads questions. They don't get what, so what, now what. So, you have to practice. The more you practice, the more comfortable you will become. Ultimately, you have the opportunity before you to become more compelling, more confident, more connected as a speaker if you leverage these techniques. If you're interested in learning more, this is where I do a little plug. Okay, I've written a book. Many of the MBA students who take the strategic communication classes here that I and others teach read it. It's called Speaking Up Without Freaking Out. More importantly, there's a website here that I curate called No Freaking Speaking. And it has lots of information that I've written and others have written about how to become more effective at speaking. So that's the end of my plug. What I'd really like to do is enter into a spontaneous speaking situation with you. And I would love to entertain any questions that you have. There are 2 people who are running around with microphones, so some of us who remember the Phil Donahue show, we're going to do a little bit of that. If you have a question, the microphone will come, and I'm happy to answer it. I think if you
John?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Can you talk about hostile situations?
Hostile situations, yes. So when you find yourself in a challenging situation, first, it should not become a surprise to you. It should not be a surprise. Before you ever speak, you should think about what is the environment going to be like. So it shouldn't surprise you that there might be some challenges in the room. When there are hostile situations that arise, you have to acknowledge it. So if somebody says, that's a ridiculous idea, why did you come up with that? To simply say, so the idea I came up with was, right? Acknowledge the emotion. I recommend not naming the emotion. Right? So you sound really angry versus I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. Now we're arguing over their mental state, right? Emotional state. So I say something like, I hear you have a lot of passion on this issue, or I hear there's great concern from you, so you acknowledge the emotion, because otherwise it sits in the room. And then reframe and respond the way that makes sense. So if somebody raises their hand and says, your product is ridiculously priced, why do you charge so much? I might say, I hear great concern. And what you're really asking about is the value of our product. And I would give my value proposition, and then I would come back and say, and because of the value we provide, we believe it's priced fairly. So you answer the question about price, but you reframe it in a way that you feel more comfortable answering it. So the way to do this is to practice all the skills we just talked about. The only skill that I'm adding to this is the awareness in advance that you might be in that situation. First, I have to truly listen to what I'm hearing, right? It's very easy for me when I hear a challenging question to get all defensive and not hear what the person's asking. I see it as an opportunity to reframe and explain. Okay, so again, you have to practice, but that's how I think you address it. Are there other questions? I see a question back here. Yes, please.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
For a lot of the speaking I do, I have remote audiences, so audiences distributed all over the country with telecom. Any tips for those kinds of audiences?
So when you are speaking in a situation where not everybody is co-located, okay? In fact, right at this very moment, there are people watching this presentation remotely. What you need to do is be mindful of it. Second, try to include engagement techniques where the audience actually has to do something. So physical participation is what we did here through the games. You can ask your audience to imagine something. Imagine what it would be like if, when we tried to achieve a goal. Rather than say, here's the goal we're trying to achieve, say, imagine what it would be like if. See what that does to you. It pulls you in. I can take polling questions. Most of the technology that you're referring to has some kind of polling feature. You can open up some kind of wiki or Google Doc or some collaborative tool where people can be doing things and you can be monitoring that while you're presenting. So I might take some breaks. I talk for 10, 15 minutes and say, okay, let's apply this. And let's go into this Google Doc I've created and I see what people are doing. So it's about variety and it's about engagement. Those are the ways that you really connect to people who are remote from you. Okay? Other questions? Who you're pointing? Oh, I gotta look for where the mic is. Yes, please.
This may be similar to the first question, but I do a lot of expert witness testimony. What's your recommendation for handling cross-examination, specifically?
I feel like I'm being cross-examined, right? So in any speaking situation that you go into that has some planned element to it, I recommend identifying certain themes that you think are important or believe need to come out. And then with each one of those themes, have some examples and concrete evidence that you can use to support it. You don't go in with memorized terms or ways of saying it. You just have ideas and themes, and then you put them together as necessary. So when I'm in a situation where people are interrogating me, I have certain themes that I want to get across and make sure that I can do that in a way that fits the needs in the moment. If it's hostile, again, the single best tool you have to buy yourself time and to help you answer a question efficiently is paraphrasing. The paraphrase is like the Swiss Army knife of communication. If you remember the show MacGyver, it's your MacGyver tool, right? So when a question comes in, the way you paraphrase it allows you the opportunity to reframe it, to think about your answer, and to pause and make sure you got it right. So when you're in those situations, if you have the opportunity to paraphrase it, so what you're really asking about is X, Y, and Z, that gives you the opportunity to employ one of these techniques. Now, I've never been an expert witness because I'm not an expert on anything, but those tools I believe could be helpful. The microphone is back there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been so helpful and enjoyable this morning.
Thank you.
Would you please show the last screen so we can get down the name of the book that you've written and the information?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think they actually, you might even have an opportunity to, I know it's on the sheet too. Everything I said is on the back of that sheet, but I'm happy to have this behind me while I talk. Other questions? Yes, please.
Yes, I work with groups that represent many different cultural backgrounds.
Yes.
So are there any caveats, or is this a universal strategy?
So in terms of, from your perspective as the speaker, I believe this applies. But whenever you communicate, part of the listening aspect is also thinking about is who is my audience and what are their expectations? So what are the cultural expectations of the audience that I'm presenting to? So there might be certain norms and rules that are expected. So when I travel and do talks, I have to take into account where I'm doing the presentation. So I help present in the Ignite program. If you have not heard about the Ignite program here at the GSB, it's fantastic. And I just did a presentation standing in one of these awesome classrooms that have all these cameras, and I just taught 35 people in Santiago, Chile. Right? And I needed to understand the cultural expectations of that area and what they expect and what they're willing to do when I ask them to participate. So it's a part of that listening step where you reflect on what are the expectations of the audience. I think we have time for 2 more questions, and then I'm going to hang around afterwards if anybody has individual questions, but some of these folks really want me to keep on schedule. Yes,
I wanted to ask a question. One of the things that you've done effectively in your talking, and I've seen other effective speakers do, is interject humor in their talk. What are the risks and rewards of trying to do that?
Well, first, thank you, and I appreciate all of you laughing. That's the sum total of all my jokes. You've heard them. I am not funny beyond those jokes. So humor is wonderfully connecting. It's wonderfully connecting. It's a great tool for connection. It is very, very risky. Cultural reasons get in the way. Sometimes what you think is funny isn't funny to other people. What research tells us is that if you're going to try to be funny, self-deprecating humor is your best bet, okay? Because it is the least risky. There is nothing worse than putting out a joke and having no response. It actually sets you back farther than if you would have gotten where you would have gotten if the joke would have hit. So basic fundamentals you need to think about with humor. 1, is it funny? How do I know? I ask other people first. Second, what happens if it doesn't work? Have a backup plan, right? And then third, if you're worried about the answers to those first 2, don't do it, right? One last question, please. The microphone is right here. And then, like I said, I will hang around afterwards. Yes, please.
I'm sort of on the opposite side of this, since I am a journalist and I frequently have to ask spontaneous questions of people who have been through media training.
Yes.
So any tips for chinks in the armor? Way to ask a question without being antagonistic, but get a facsimile of a straight answer.
Well, so let me give you 2 answers. One is I have young boys, and the power of the why is great. Just ask why a couple times, and you can get through that first 2 layers of training. You know, why do you say that? How do you feel about that? The second bit is what I have found successful in getting people to, I do this to get people to answer in a more authentic way. What I'll do is I'll ask them to give advice. So what advice would you give somebody who's challenged with this? Or what advice would you give to somebody in this situation? And by asking for the advice, it changes the relationship they have to me as the question asker, and I often get much more rich, detailed information. So the power of the why, and then put them in a position of providing guidance, and that can really work. With that, I'm going to thank you very much. I welcome you to ask questions later, and enjoy the rest of your reunion weekend. Thank you.